Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about communication. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, my manager has told me that I am too aggressive in my communication. What should I do? Well, say nothing at all, I would say, and learn how to detach yourself from what you're doing. That would be my suggestion, because this is extremely. I mean, of course, there's a different way to approach this, which is to, well, there's a lot of literature. There's a lot of ways for you to learn non-aggressive communication and so forth. The thing that I think that you should think about though is what like who you should be aware of that although you should definitely invest in learning how to communicate effectively, but the problem is that some people feel things differently from other people. And something that you should be aware of, I think, is that if you repress yourself too much, if you force yourself too much to never speak your mind or to always try to get along with absolutely everybody, and which is a very popular thing to do in some cultures, it might damage you in different ways. I can only imagine how many psychiatrists are making tons and tons and tons of money off the fact of, say, managers or POs or like whoever, people who feel really bad because they have to basically go to work every single day and deal with people who, for whatever reason, are allowed to be as aggressive as they want, but because they are lower down the food chain, they just have to stand there and take it. I can just refer my own girlfriend has the same sort of thing in her profession where like customers that can come in at any moment at any day every single day and be very rude or like really treat her poorly, and because the company has a policy, she has no like, she can't deal with it. And for some people that is an easy thing to brush off and like kind of just you just had a bad interaction and then you move on with your life. But some people really do get damaged by this as a person. And honestly, if you work in that sort of environment where you feel that you have to conform way too much, where it's actually it feels bad. If you are building up this internal tension because you feel like you can never be heard, you can never speak your mind, or so forth, then you either have to find a way to ventilate that some way, or you have to switch jobs, I would say. But in terms of just learning how to not communicate as aggressively, if you're open to it, take a look at there's so much literature around non-aggressive communication, and I think depending on where you work, you might have people in your company who might be able to give you tips on how to do this. And if your manager has told you this, then be transparent and try to be humble and say, could you give me some materials that I can look into? How should I do this? Because now they basically are telling you that they have an opinion on how you conduct yourself at work. One thing that is worth knowing as well, depending on your laws and around employment and so forth, they might not act like you might actually not have to make much of an adjustment because they can't, even if you do lose your temper or if you are strong, if you're really direct, and sometimes being direct is just the thing that you need, and in some cases it's not appropriate, or it's a bit taboo. Uh, that's the thing I would like you to really think about. Being direct or being an aggressive communicator is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it is, yes, for sure it is. But I would say that in some cases it is just the right thing, depending on your situation. But you have to be able to start figuring, and it's a game, it's an office politics games, and it's not just an office politics games, it's a game of communication and soft skills and like all this stuff. It is such a problem because you're in an environment where you have different people who are have different levels of sensitivity and communication, and like aligning all of this stuff. Like, this is what your manager, your boss in HR department is supposed to be dealing with like all the time, and I'm guessing that they are. Someone used too strong words in one situation and someone's got offended, or someone said something that was inappropriate. Like, there's so much of these sorts of communicational issues in practically every organization. So my tip is to you that either go and ask your manager for feedback. Okay, what concretely, what am I putting out there that is not good, and just see what they have to say. If they can't give you anything about that, ask them, okay, literature, like how am I supposed to do this? Because just telling you that you're an aggressive communicator, that opens up a lot of opportunities for you, or like a lot of possibilities, which is a problem, because you might have thought to yourself that I was just talking, and then there's someone who is really sensitive or takes it the wrong way, and because they have it can be everything from that they have influence to that your manager is just really on their side in these sorts of issues. It's really hard to say. You don't even know if you're in the wrong. You could have it can be the most innocent thing in the world, but it can be something big, and this is it's almost impossible to say, all right, is it the person who said the thing that is responsible for making it the softest and like most, because it's so hard to communicate in a way where nobody could possibly be offended at any point, versus is it the responsibility of the person who received the information to understand, to try to understand and try to absorb it in a good way. And that the answer here is really, I would argue, that there's a mutual responsibility, and sometimes that balance is practically impossible to get between two people, because one might be a very strong communicator and another person might be extremely sensitive to aggressive communication, and having those two align, that is hard to make them communicate effectively. If you find it too difficult to adjust your behavior and your communication and so forth, I find the best way to deal with this is to unplug a little bit, to emotionally distance yourself from the things that are making you communicate quote unquote aggressively, and try to just say nothing. Say as little as possible. It's really hard to do this, especially if you're a passionate person, if you really care about the stuff that you're doing. But sometimes you have to understand that to the company, and remember that at the end of the day, you're working for an organization and they have certain values, and just because you don't share those values, maybe you are one of those worker bees who really wants to be really productive, but the company is full of it's mainly made up of people who really like a lot of meetings and like they want to talk everything through, and everything is about emotions and so forth. They're much more that way. I'm very sorry to say, you're the person, even if the company might have issues that you could very clearly fix, you might not be able to do it in the way that you want. And either you then have to play the game, or you just have to go through the motions. Because trust me when I say this, there's an ocean of workers and people around the world who have understood that the environment that they find themselves in is not fertile for their type of personality and their way of doing things. And the only option then is conform to whatever is popular within that context, whatever the dominant thing is, or just accept it. Like, just go with it, go through the motions. Nobody can control your thoughts, nobody can control your emotional state, and nobody can force you to be engaged. You can just do a good job and just do whatever, and then just try to not emotional distance yourself from the fact that things are going the wrong way. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you have problems communicating with your coworkers, there are a few paths for you to take. I would suggest that, if at all possible, talk to your manager, try to get them to give you any guidance on how you can improve your communication. Maybe there's been a specific issue that you can use as a reference, and like try to understand, okay, what are the expectations. If that is unfeasible to you, or you don't really understand what the issue is, you didn't get more information, then then you can, well, I'm not saying become a code monkey, because that's not healthy for you either, but try to understand that at the end of the day, even if you know differently, the company is free to tell, like, as long as you work for them, they are allowed to say to allocate you to whatever, right? And even if they have you do things that you know is going to blow up and you really want to say something about it, if you can emotionally distance yourself from it and kind of not care as much, that might be the most feasible option for you, because the alternative is to completely try to change the person that you are. For some people, being very flexible and like emotionally flexible and like really putting on the good old mask that we all have and really keeping their real feelings shielded from everybody else, that is something that comes very natural. And from some people, that is like, it's like emotional suicide, and you have to figure out what type of person you are, and try to figure out a solution accordingly. Have a great day.